Welcome back to the Longview PD On Air podcast. I'm your host, Michaela Vaughn.
I am Ryan Rocket.
I am still not Batman, but I am Carrie Higginbotham.
And today our special guest is Sergeant Jacky Hiles.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome. I'm so proud to be here.
We're proud to have you here.
I know you are. I can see it in your eyes.
So we're talking to Jacky today, and he is going to tell everybody that he's retiring soon.
Well, you just told everybody before he could.
Oh, dang it.
He took all the glory from
He
me.
did.
All right.
So, speaking of that, Jacky, how long have you been at LPD?
Last week was my 38th year. Last week, I think the 26th, whatever day that
Wow.
was, 26th of March.
That's with Longview.
With Longview. Oh, yes.
And prior to coming here, you'd had other experience in Dangerfield. Is that right?
I was at Dangerfield PD for 7.5 years.
Awesome.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then prior to that, I was with the city of Gilmer for 13 months.
Oh, my gosh.
And prior to that, I was a reserve. That's where I got my reserve certificate from the city of Ore City.
How long have you been doing policing?
I went to the academy in 75.
Jacky, that's a day or two.
Yes, sir, it is.
Man. That's awesome.
Academy
So-
was 6 weeks.
Oh, it's a little bit longer these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just by a little bit.
6-week academy.
Mount Pleasant, Texas.
Man.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So Mount Pleasant. You got there for a reason. Where are you from, Jacky?
I was born and raised in the early years in a little town called Pittsburgh in Camp County,
I'm
Texas.
familiar.
We migrated there to a little community called Midway, which is halfway between Gilmer and Pittsburgh.
It's a gas station now.
Yep. And it used to be a peach orchard. I worked in the peach orchard and drove tractors and stuff. And it was just a little community called Midway. It was, I guess, because it was midway between Gilmer and Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So what got you from a peach orchard to Longview PD?
Ooh,
Or I guess
that's a long
to
journey.
police work in general. But yeah, take us through the whole journey.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We lived on a little road called Rabbit Trail. It was dirt. There was the sheriff's office back then was Doyle Johnson was the sheriff, and we had a deputy named Keller. And one day he just drove up, going up down the road, just in an old car, and got out and spoke to me and talked about, hey, be a good boy, always do what your parents say, obey them, do all this, and respect this and do that. Just that, that up down. I said, wow, this is coming from a sheriff, and that means something. So he's telling me to do right and do all these things. So that was kind of the first seed that was planted, I guess. And then after I finished out, getting ready to finish high school, I got this letter in the mail from Richard Nixon saying, greetings, Jacky. I need you to report to Dallas on June the 6th. I need you in the United States Army. So I got drafted and went in the Army. I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, took basic training, and at the end of the training, they give you a list of where you're going because I was a draftee. You didn't have many choices, and it said, oh, you're going to Fort Gordon, Georgia. You're going to be in the military police. I said, oh, my gosh, military police. So I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia. I also went to the Signal Corps there, so I kind of had a dual-purpose MOS. I was a 95 Bravo, which was military police, and I was also a 31 Mike 20, was a radio relay carrier attendant. So I did my basic and my AAT, and I got shipped to Ramstein, West Germany, and spent about 18 months in Germany. So I got out of the United States Army. I came back, and I was going to Kilgore College because we had the GI Bill, I took all criminal justice classes. There was a bunch of guys, Bill Eckhart and a bunch of guys were teaching classes over there. And that kind of planted another...
So Bill was doing this long before then.
Yeah, Eckhart. He was also working at Gladewater at the time. And that kind of planted another seed. And so my family had always been in the automotive field. I mean, my uncle and everybody was garage and did all that kind of stuff there in Ore City, Texas. So another friend of mine said, hey, we're having a reserve academy down here at the sheriff's office. The sheriff's putting on a deal, and you go 2 nights a week for so many weeks. So they let me go to the Reserve Academy, and I ended up being a reserve for Ore City. And then about after a year, I did football games and special deals there at the little town. And there was a friend of mine they had a position open in Gilmer, so I applied and went to be a patrolman for 13 months in the city of Gilmer.
What year was that?
I went to Gilmer?
Yes, sir.
77.
So back then, Gilmer was a little bit bigger because of Lone Star Steel and all that?
Oh, yeah. There was probably 8,000 people worked out back then. Lone Star Steel was it. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was like Texas Eastman of the day.
Well, their number one deal then that was the Vietnam War was going on, and they were making bomb casings and sending the bomb casings to Laterno, which would finish them and ship them off to ordnance wherever they made the ammunition.
So Gilmer, Ore City, those were a little bit bigger.
A big trucking company,
Yeah.
Everybody worked at Lone Star. Yeah.
So that was that was leading up to you coming to work at Gilmer.
Yeah.
And how long were you there for?
13 months.
That seems short. What made that so short?
Here's the crust of that question. The starting pay at Gilmer PD when I started there was $307 a month. So one of my friends that I met while I was in the police academy called me up one day and said, "Hey, Jacky, we've got a position open in Dangerfield. Would you be interested in coming over?" And I said, "Sure." So I went over and interviewed, and when they got down to saying, "Well, are you willing to come? What pay and all that?" And I said, "Well, just by chance, what does Dangerfield pay?" He said, "We'll start you at $575." And I said, "When do I start?" So I went from 307 to 575.
And how long did you spend in Dangerfield?
I was there right at 7.5 years. I was a great town.
So what was your career like in Dangerfield? What all did you do?
If some things hadn't happened, we had a tragedy there in Dangerfield in 1980. I was, I don't know, y'all may know about this, but we had a church shooting in Dangerfield where Alvin Lee King walked into the First Baptist Church in Dangerfield, Texas, in June the 20th of 1980. He killed 5 people and wounded 19. That was probably the first church shooting, I think, in the nation.
Oh.
So that meant, that kind of grounded me and said, "Hey, these people are good people," and it made me stay another few years because I was contemplating. I'd had an interview. I went to Austin and interviewed with TABC because there again another contact said that TAB was hiring, and I thought I'd like to be a TABC agent. So I went down there and they offered me a job, but they were going to send me to Corpus Christi. So I turned that job down and decided I'd stay at Dangerfield because it was just going good. People appreciated the police. We was a little 5-man department with some reserves, and the pay went on up as we stayed there. For a small department, I thought we were blessed with good equipment. And we had another deal where the community actually supported us. Dangerfield was a tight-knit community with football, Lone Star. But then in the early 80s, that's when Lone Star's going down.
Yeah.
They started importing a lot of steel from China and other places. They had actually said that they could produce it, ship it over there, and ship it back cheaper than they can make it in Lone Star. So that you went from 8,000 people down to 3, 4, and I think now, well, it's closed. There's nobody there.
Yeah, blew my mind the other day. We were coming through, and they've actually started knocking down parts of it, and I guess scrap.
A lot of scrap metal there.
Yeah, man. Man.
Yeah. So I stayed there a few more years, and I don't know. I just said I'm not going anywhere. I mean, this is where I'll always be. There's just 5 of us. I never wanted to be the chief of police. I mean, I was the second guy in charge up there with a 5-man department. That's not much. So there again, somebody told me, "Hey, maybe you ought to check Longview out." So to be honest with you, I tested at Marshall first, and then I came over here and interviewed with one of the recruiters then. I think it was Tom Wilbeck, and I took the little test down there, which about killed me because I was not in shape at that time.
Oh, here?
Oh yeah. No, back then it was. I can tell you what we did on the test when I hired here, but. I applied, I think, in November of...
oh, hang on. Well, I want to know what the test was.
Yeah, what was the test?
Oh, you want to know that?
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
The test. First, you had to go out to Mod Cobb. Lieutenant McCaleb was over training at the time. I know both of y'all remember him. He was a chief when y'all were both here. Mm-hmm. But you had to go out Mod Cobb, and you're probably not going to believe this, but they set the room up in one of the small, I think the Edelman room, and they had over 100 people show up. And first you had to do a written test, which was basic math and spelling and stuff like that. So once we did the test, I'm just estimating 130 people took the test. After that, there was probably 75 or 80 that passed the test. And then they weeded out that. They checked some things. And then they said, okay, that was in the morning. They said, everybody show up at the fire training facility down here at Nelson and where the park, Stamper Park is. And they said, show up down here, I think, at like 1:30 or 2 because you're going to do your physical agility test. So we got down there, and they lined us all up. They had one of the marked police cars sitting just inside the gate. They had it parked there, and then if y'all been down to that training facility, it's got probably its chain link fence goes all the way around the facility. Well, they had 3 big boards set up down at the end. It was like maybe 2.5 feet, 4 feet, and then it was about 6 or 8 feet. You had to start off. They timed you. You started off where the police car was. You ran all the way down. You went over those 3 barriers. Once you got over the 3 barriers, they had like a 4x6 board on blocks with buckets, and you got up on that I call it a balance beam. You got up on that. If you wanted to use the buckets to kind of balance yourself, you walked across the balance beam with the buckets. Then you got off, dropped the buckets, and you turned to your left, and there was a set of monkey bars. If you're ever in school, you remember monkey bars? Mm-hmm. Those about kill me. You got up and went across the monkey bars because there's a trick to monkey bars. You learn how to swing. If you try to do this one, your weight will pull you off. So you learn how to swing it, and they'd let you take several chances at it. Thank God I made it. So then after you get off the monkey bars, there's the tower down there.
Yes.
You had to go up.
I'm familiar with it.
You had to go all up the 3 stairs, all the way back as fast as you can go. Mm-hmm. You got down the stairs. You went over to the police car, got behind it. They had it on level in neutral. You had to push the car about 10 feet. Then when you pushed the car and they said, you're good, you ran the whole outer perimeter of that field, and I think you had to do it like in 5 minutes or less or something like that. They cut that deal in over half. I was blessed. There's 20 of us left. And I hate to say it, but all the women that were there testing, nobody got past that because it was hard.
Yeah.
Going over a wooden 8-foot wall is not easy.
So in the time that led up to you coming to Longview and in those first years that you were here, how many women officers had you, was there a bunch or?
When I first came here, I was on evenings. There was 1 female on evenings, and there was 1 on midnights.
What about at the agencies? What about at the agencies before that you worked at?
There was dispatchers, jailers. Before I came to Longview, I never worked with a female officer.
Oh, wow.
Never.
Wow.
Very few. But now Longview, I know there was 1 on evenings. There was 1 sergeant. That was Kathy Nelson. She was here as a sergeant. And then there was Karen Strange was on midnights, and her last name was Johnson. She was on evenings. But that's the only 3 I remember.
You said something else, too, that stuck me. You said that when you tested, can you imagine over 100 people showing up to test?
No.
That's crazy, yeah.
I'm just, in my head, I was just like, oh my
If we could get that many
gosh.
people to show up today, that would be...
Let me tell you the other caveat. But guess the vast majority of guess what they were? They were veterans.
With the Vietnam War coming to an end,
A bunch of them were veterans.
Yeah,
over 50% were veterans.
I believe it, and that actually makes sense. I guess when you think about it on that scale, if you look at the tail end of any of the, which we hadn't had major conflicts for a little bit, but probably at the end of Desert Storm, I bet we saw an influx of veterans. I know certainly because I am a product of this at the end of, or as the GWAT started to ramp down, a lot of veterans. That's interesting.
Yep.
It's that service, a sense of service.
Yeah.
Sense of service. It really is.
Yeah, it's funny because they talk about the fact that, those people that have been raised in that environment, I say raised, I'm using air quotes here, but coming out of the military, this is that same tribal sense of belonging that they get there.
If I'd have been smart, if I thought about it now, I would have probably. I didn't have a problem in the military. I really liked it. I liked the job I did. I could have probably made a 20-year career and still. I mean, we've got guys now that's starting a second career here in their early 40s that just retired from the Army. But the military was good for. I think it's good for anybody. I mean, it does give you a sense of service.
Yes, I had a great time. I needed the military. I needed the Marine Corps specifically. I guess for some perspective for those that don't know, I grew up around you. I've been around you my whole life. Fate would have it that, when I was
shocked when you came to work here.
when I was, just a wee little thing, you lived right down the street, and we were talking about it before we started recording, how I would wait for you to leave because you had a take-home car at the time. And this was, let's see, what year did we move? 89?
We moved in that house in 88.
Yeah, and I think we moved on the street in 89 or 90.
We were there for a long time.
It would have been 88 or 89.
Yeah, I was there nearly 2000.
And we would wait for you to leave, and you would always flash your lights and honk your siren at us, and then that was the signal for all the little boys and girls in the neighborhood to sneak over your fence at your house because you had you were one of 3 people in our neighborhood that had a pool. He was the one with the easiest fence to jump.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what year was it that you came to Longview?
I applied. Now, I have to say this. It was not a quick process. I applied in the fall of 80. Oh, don't quote. Fall of 85. I got a call to come. I want to say it was the first or second week after Christmas, 1st of January of 86. And I did all that stuff, and then they scheduled you for a physical. Then you had to do a polygraph, and then you came back for an interview with a panel, and then you came back. When I came back for the final interview, it was the two. Back then, when I came here, you had a assistant chief or deputy chief, and you had a chief, and there was I don't know if he was a captain or I said on that interview, and matter of fact, the guy at the time that knew me, was Neil McKinney. He was the ex-sheriff at Dangerfield, so he kind of already knew me, and he knew that I had a pretty good, he knew I didn't have any bad traits and I hadn't did anything wrong in Dangerfield, so I think that helped me a lot. But that was the final deal, and then I went back for a couple of weeks, didn't hear anything, and then I know one day Sergeant McCaleb called me and said, "We're going to give you I guess like a conditional job. When could you start?" And I said, "Well, I like where I'm at. I've been here a long time, and I think I should give them quite a bit." So I started here. I said my anniversary was. I started here in March of that year. I guess my first date was March 26th
of 86.
86, 38 years.
Wow.
And I started, and back then you still had FTOs. I don't think our training deals were 5 weeks. I think they were 4. And I think you had a week in there for remedial, but if you were prior experience, you got on accelerated. So the FTOs I were with one of them was a very seasoned officer. He'd been here a long time, and the other 2 were about 5 or 6. And I think I did 2 weeks first phase, 2 weeks third phase, and then I did a week in ghost phase. But y'all got to realize back then we didn't have computers or anything. We had a piece of paper that we wrote everything down, so there wasn't a whole lot of clerical type of training. You had to fill in a blank report. Everything was pretty simple. So, and back then you had also, I thought was you had to spend a week in dispatch, you had to spend a week in the jail, and you had to spend a week in records. And that was interesting to be in dispatch for a week, and then be in records for a week, and then be in the jail for a week. We had our own jail back then, by the way.
What was so when you started in Longview? So that was 86.
Yeah.
What was the population of Longview?
I think it was 60, right at close to. I think it was about close to 70,000.
It's a pretty big change from.
Oh yeah.
From coming.
They've hired a lot of officers. We increased staffing since I.
Well, I'm just talking about just the way that you would police towns that you were. Had previous experience into a town of 60,000
compared to this.
Well, here's what I don't have a problem from a guy coming from a small department. In a small department, you do everything.
Yeah.
You're the traffic investigator. You're the traffic enforcer. You're the report taker. You're the report investigator. If it's a burglary, guess who investigates it?
You were jack of all trades.
Yes, you do everything. So that kind of gives you I think it's an advantage. You learn a lot of deals. I mean, I think it helps you out in the long run. And I'm not saying coming straight to a big department, but I think sometimes if you come from a pretty decent small department, you've done everything, so you've got a little edge up on things.
Yeah, no.
And you got a different perspective.
Yeah, I was about to say that perspective. You understand how every top to bottom.
I mean,
start
you go to
finish,
grand
everything
jury,
works.
you fill out the complaints, you get the you do it all.
So you went from jack of all trades to
Evening shift patrol.
Yeah, the Jacky
Of all trades.
Oh.
No, I like that.
Yes.
Y'all
So speaking of being a jack of all trades, Jacky, what all units have you been in here?
And different departments.
Yeah.
I started after I got out of FTO training, and I got assigned to evening shift. I did evenings for about over a year, and then back then we had they still have it. It was called the STEP program, but back then officers would get assigned to work STEP for 90 days. Everybody, especially on evenings and days, we had these Dodge Diplomats. I've got a picture of them in my office somewhere, but everybody on evenings took turns, rotated. You did STEP for 90 days. That's all you did was traffic enforcement, mainly up and down US 80 and some part on the loop. But I had to do 90 days in STEP, and I'll be honest with you, writing tickets is not my forte. I'm not a ticket writing. I would be a bad traffic officer, but everybody had to do STEP, and that's all you did.
And for those listening, STEP is the selective traffic
enforcement.
enforcement
Program. Yes, yeah, it was a government grant.
And you got stuck on that thing.
But all of us, well, you knew your rotation. Oh, by the way, next month you got 90 days of STEP. I mean, you came into briefing, but you went and got in your STEP car, and you went out and did nothing but traffic.
For 3 months.
3 months.
I mean, I like traffic enforcement as
Now
much as
it's-
the next
now
guy,
it's-
but I don't know about 90 days. That's it.
Well, now it's an off duty. It's a
Yeah.
overtime gig.
Yeah, man. So after that, what else?
After that, there was a trend. The government come out with programs where it was called the repeat offender program, and it's where you dealt with. I'd call it the open door, where you go out the door and come right back in. People were repeating the same crimes over and over, and people said, we've got to get those people off the street. So the chief at the time, they planned for a grant, and it was 4 officers and a sergeant. So I applied for that position. I was selected, and I want to say in the summer of '89, we started what was called the ROPE unit, ROP. It was called Repeat Offender Program, and all we did was we worked with parole, probation, everybody that were habitual criminals. We would do whatever it took. We'd take a case report that patrol did. We would try to go back and talk to witnesses, victims. We would try to literally do everything we could do to make a case on that individual and to jerk them off the street. And then we had a special prosecutor at the time named Becky Simpson. They called her the Black Widow. She was our special prosecutor, and the jail, we'd put a notation: if these people come into jail, they do not get a window bond. They get a no bond, and they'll see the judge, and they would put a higher bond. So I think it was very, very, very effective. We did that. I did that probably 4 years, and then our next administration changed it, and we went to a deal that's called street crimes. I was in the street. We changed from rope to street crimes, and that was another way to supplement narcotics. And we lived on Sabine and Nelson back then. Back in 1992, I think we had 19 homicides that year, and the vast majority were in that general vicinity.
Wow.
From Nelson and High, all the way down to Red City, Sabine, Ekman, all those streets. It was a war on drugs, and on a Friday and Saturday night, there'd be over 1,000 people on the streets. That's when we were going through the hiatus of crack cocaine, big time.
So we had Captain Lair on the podcast. I think our second, third episode, one of those.
He worked in that beat.
Right. So he mentioned being in the street crimes unit.
Mm-hmm.
Were y'all working together?
Now he came in. So there were 4 of us in the unit and a sergeant. All of us but 2 got transferred back to patrol, and the other 2 stayed, and they were attached to the code unit. It soon to come to find out that that was a bad decision, and they rebuilt that unit, and that's when it came back to, I think, 4 units, 4 people and a sergeant. They were more like street crimes. They were still in BDUs and playing, dressed down stuff, and that's when Officer Lair and them was in it. But the K9, the drug K9, it stayed in narcotics, and one more stayed. So we all went to patrol. I was back on midnights again. I was an FTO. I was on midnights for probably a little over a year. And we had also started a new program that was part of the street crimes. We had a deal called community policing or community policing officers. And the chief was building that into a community police officer for each beat. And there was an officer transferred out of there, and there was a position come open for a PAR officer. And I'll be honest with you, midnights was just killing me, and I said, I've got to get off this shift. So I applied for the PAR position and got it. And I spent a long part of my career at Longview up in Beat 20 as the PAR officer in Beat 20. And I was in that unit until I got promoted to sergeant. So that was in 1999, I think. No, 2000. But I was in PAR. I was in the police area, which I'll be honest, I enjoyed that job because the older you get, the more you respect. This is more than a job just riding around in a car. If you want to have a productive deal and have people that support you, you've got to get out and meet with them. You got to. Back in the day when I started, I didn't tell you all this story, but this is the truth. My first police car was a 1963 6-cylinder standard shift Biscayne Chevrolet. It had an AM radio in it, no air conditioning. So back then, you rode around town in what? With your windows down. So if that neighbor hollered at you and said, hey, officer, come out and get a glass of tea, you heard him. Well, come along air conditioning and all these deals. So I have to say now most officers are riding around with all the windows up and they're focused on going down the road or looking at their computer or whatever. And I think that's not good because you lose the support and the contact and that relationship that you have to have in a community to be a successful department. Because if the community's not behind you, you're just coming here and going home. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
Mm.
And, I've been, thank you, Jesus, fortunate enough to always have air conditioning. I never guess I considered how one simple thing can change the accessibility.
Yeah.
Policing has come a long way.
Windows make barriers.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's funny. Very interesting.
So when you were in PAR, were you in that same beat the whole time?
The whole time I was I was a PAR officer for 20. The mall, we've been probably in the mall office longer than any office, and that was given to us. I met with the management, and we were out on Gilmer Road when I first took that position, and Beat 20 was primarily in the mall and all that area, and we've been in the mall ever since. I mean, but I spent 7+ years probably in the PAR position. It's probably some of the best. I mean, you build up a lot of relationships, and those people are. I hate to keep saying it, but that's our bread and butter. That's the people that outdeal the people that call in and complain. They're the ones that'll come out in front of the department and give you a standing deal, and you drive through. They'll come out and support you and stuff like that. So you got to have the community, or you're not going to be effective.
We've talked about it before. We are incredibly fortunate here in Longview to have the support from the community that we have.
Yes.
And a lot of that is because of the relationships that the groundwork that you laid and people in the same position as you, the work that y'all have put in.
I appreciate that, but every officer should be doing the same thing.
Oh, I agree. Yep. But having a foundation set makes it a lot easier for people to continue.
I told, when I was FTO, I said, if you're afraid to get out of your car and go up on a porch or up in a driveway and talk to somebody just unannounced, you're not thinking right. You're not. You don't know what your job is. I'm telling you, because that person you went up that day and talked to in the driveway just to that'll be the person that'll call you and say, Officer Hiles, you remember I saw this other day, and because of that relationship, I'm going to call in and tell you what I saw, and here's a lot. I'm a nosy neighbor. I wrote down this list, and you'll be surprised how many leads or good witnesses you can get from that kind of relationship.
Oh, yeah. Well, it humanizes it. It takes it away from I'm calling the police to I'm calling Jacky. I know him. He's my friend.
Well, you got that trust factor.
Right.
So
And one becomes two becomes four, because when that nosy neighbor's friend calls them down the street, they don't know Jacky, but they know somebody that does.
Well, most people have that deal that the only contact they ever have with a police officer is bad. Right. I got a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
Or I don't like the decision you made, and that leaves
a bad taste.
bad taste.
And that grows just the same as those experiences, be they good or bad, always multiply. Yeah.
So speaking of those experiences and relationships that you have built, you mentioned earlier something about Sally's. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Captain Laird told me to ask you about Sally's.
Well, Captain Laird would only say that because when we were on Midnights, I was in beat 40, and Captain Laird, he was Officer Laird at the time, was in beat 50. And one of our other co-parts, Danny Butler, was in beat 60. And Sally's was a sandwich, had great food. She had like a blue plate special. You'd go there and eat lunch. But in the morning she had breakfast, and she made some of the best pies probably around. And Sally she lived down the street from us there on Creekwood. Mm-hmm. Sally gave me a key. Danny had a key. Give me a key to her place. And she said, when you get tired, you need to go in the bathroom or eat a snack. Everything's in there. Just clean up what you do. So say sometime in mid-morning when things just slow down, we'd all go to Sally's and eat butterscotch pie or coconut pie or make she left the deals open in the stainless steel. You go in and make you a pimento cheese sandwich. We didn't cook anything. We just made sandwiches or eat pie. So we'd spend a lot of time. We'd have briefings in Sally's.
That sounds fantastic.
That's awesome.
But Officer Laird at the time, he would come over and eat pie a lot of times. Yep, take a pie break.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something else that I've heard you say more times than I care to remember. About I think I started hearing it when I was in SIA. I'm sure Carrie's probably heard the same thing. You look at us and talk about how we just think we're jump out boys, but you were jump out boys before
you were the
before
original.
there were jump out boys.
Yeah.
I had to have surgery because of being a jump out boy. I blew up the knee. Also, y'all seen the pictures. We had a chief that let us be a little aggressive. He also let me go out to SWEPCO and get 2 utility poles and put on the back of the city record. The jump out boys got to bash in the door while the SWAT team went in and made entry. Y'all seen those pictures, haven't you?
Oh,
That's the one on your desk, right?
Yeah, the one.
Yes.
Where I'm standing in front of the record. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff. But yeah.
All right, so hang on. We have to describe this what year was this?
19. Oh gosh, Carrie, the picture. It's wrote on the back of the picture.
We don't have the picture.
You
in front
have
of
it, yeah.
Yeah, I was in the rope. Early 90s. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
93.
for
It was
those
down there at the
listening,
height of the crack down on Sabine Street.
for those listening, let me paint a picture. This is a single cab pickup truck with a
2.5 ton wrecker.
a chain, old school wrecker bed on the back of it.
Yes.
And this picture, which Michaela will post on.
Yeah, I'll do it for the Throwback Thursday. I'll use that.
So this truck has 2 wooden power poles like you see on the road
from SWEPCO, yes.
chained, hanging off the back of the bed. And the house was called the Iron House. The Iron House.
It was. Yeah.
It was barred up, hard to access.
Very hard.
And y'all were executing a search warrant there?
Executing a search warrant.
And to gain access to the house, they pulled the truck in front of it and put it in reverse.
I put it in reverse. I was driving the truck.
You were driving? And used the power poles as a ram.
I went as fast as I could and bashed the whole front of the house in. Thank gosh nobody was inside that room. But then they made entry. They had, But that's the only way. It was Iron House. That was a 24/7 operation back then.
That house
They sold crack cocaine and heroin out of that for a long time.
And that was where all that violence that you were talking about
19
was.
homicides, yep.
Man.
Yep.
Man.
You just had to, there again, that's learning to communicate with people. I mean, I wasn't a bad person. I couldn't, but once you get that respect, those people just know you're doing your job. And if there was 2 of you, they knew that if something happened, they would be somebody that'd back us up. So it was a lot of respect. I mean, they knew we were doing a job, and to to knock on wood, we never had but a few people that kind of semi-resisted. But yeah, you got to get out. That it was still like a jump out. We actually literally rolled up and just bailed out of the car. 2:00 in the morning, shotguns, get up against that type of deal. Yeah. That's the truth.
So
jump out, boys.
What did the job look like after par for you?
I took the sergeant's test, and I passed. And I did. I had no ambitions to be a supervisor, to be honest with you.
So you promoted to sergeant?
Yes.
And where'd you go after you promoted?
I went to evenings for a short stint, and then I got moved to the administrative position on days, and I was the FTO coordinator, and I stayed on days forever until, I'm trying to remember, Chief Dingler became chief, and at the time we had a civilian primarily doing all the fleet stuff, and there were some years there that our patrol fleet got to be just nearly unbearable. So I want to say it was 2005, Chief Dingler made it a permanent position. So if I'm correct on the date, I moved and took over the fleet. I took over the fleet, but the caveat was, well, we think you got enough time. You're also going to be the supervisor over the PAR unit. So I was the PAR sergeant that time, and then the sergeant that had it and the lieutenant got moved out, and then I took it back over. And then the sergeant that was over then got moved out, and then I was asked one more time, will you take it temporarily? So I took the PAR position over, and then we inherited the post unit. I had them. So I had PAR and I had post. So this is 2024. So in the summer of 21, I was fortunate enough to just do the fleet stuff, and I have been without somebody to evaluate since about 2001. 2021.
21, yeah.
Yes.
Of course, keeping the fleet managed is a chore in and of itself at this point.
Yeah. So yeah.
So all those squeaky brakes that people may hear driving around town, they can blame you for.
They can blame me.
That's right, community. You now know who your contact is on that.
So was there much of a difference in community policing? Because it's always changing from when you were in PAR the first time to when you were more recently.
Oh yeah.
What kind of changes?
Well, I'll be when you use the umbrella effect. You know what I mean by that? You put things under your umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
When we started out in community policing, you were focused on, say, doing neighborhood crime watch groups, going into a neighborhood and say, y'all have had 30 vehicle burglaries. Nobody's seen anything. You're not locking your cars. You're leaving valuables in the cars. Here, we want to form a crime watch group in this neighborhood. We'll put you up pretty signs, have crime watch meetings. Everybody gets to know their neighbor, and we have all these eyes out there that can help us. Did you see a suspicious car or person? So that was it. Well, as the years went over and over, they started putting more job responsibilities under that umbrella. You started doing citizens on patrol, child ID, just name it, we did it all. Mm-hmm. Home inspections, business security checks, and you check on sex offenders. So they put a lot of stuff under that umbrella, so it has changed. And
by the way, I still have my child ID that you did at the Longview Mall.
Yeah, we did those in the Longview Mall quite regularly. Well, did you use the electronic or the fingerprints?
No, it had the fingerprint.
The real
it was
thing?
the little laminated card with my picture and finger. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We did a lot of those.
I snorted.
We did a lot of those. I got so tired of fingerprinting.
Fingerprinting a little booger-eating kid over there.
Oh, that print doesn't look too good. So, did that kind of answer your question?
That did, yeah.
I mean, I just think there again, you have to really know what community policing is, which I said earlier. I think everybody should be doing it.
Right.
Even a patrol officer has time to get out and talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've got enough time in a day to get out and visit with people. I'm not saying neglect their call. I'm talking about you can physically get out and visit with people.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in areas where where you know that area and you work that area. You need to have those contacts, and if they start seeing a familiar face, you're just not somebody that responded to call. They don't have a problem calling dispatch. Say, hey, that officer so and so, could he call me up and I've got something I want to tell him I saw. That's how it's supposed to work.
Right.
Yep. So
but you got to get out of the car.
Yep.
So reflecting back,
Yep.
when you think about all you've done in the past, 40, 50 years as a police officer, what's that one thing you go to and you're just like, oh man, this was the most enjoyable, the most rewarding? What are some of those?
Just some standout moments too.
Yeah.
There was a situation going on in Longview. There were really two, but I don't know how much time we got. But there was a situation going on in Longview where I was in the rope unit at the time, and patrol goes and takes a report, and somebody says this, and this happened, and this, and this is missing, and you just do the report and you go about it and you don't think about it. I mean, you're just doing your job. That's all you do. You just take the report and go to the next one. Well, we had this rash of some of them were burglaries, but some of them they were sexual assaults on women. Where the person would go in the house, he'd usually come to the door and say, "Hey, can I mow your yard? Can I do this? Can I do that?" And he scoped them out, and they were mainly elderly females, and but he would go in there and he would go and sexually assault them, but then he would steal stuff. And when you work down there day in and day out on Sabine and Nelson at the time, stuff that is stolen, say, somewhere, and you know where most of the stolen stuff goes, if you stay there, it eventually comes. Back then, nearly everything that was stolen during the daytime, shoplifting, this would go to that area. So one day, we confronted this guy, and he had a bunch of rare silver dollar coins. And I remember somebody saying up on 9th Street, up there in that Ingram Park area, that an elderly person had been sexually assaulted and a bunch of old coins were stolen. So the person that got the coins for the dope knew me, and he knew that we had things on him, and it was his benefit to cooperate with. So he actually gave me the coins back from that burglary and that sexual assault. So we took that and started just going from this to this to this, but it ended up, I think he sexually assaulted like 5 women in that area. And by that one contact, we were able to develop a name. But when he knew that it was on it, and we even brought in, I don't know if y'all know Sheriff Larry Smith over in Tyler. Mm-hmm. He was at the time, he was the ATF. He was with ATF. And the guy that we came up with a suspect was also a felon who had firearms. And ATF at the time would take your case and say, here's what he's going to get for this weapon. So we brought Larry in and helped us. And I know it at the time, but you'd had to have been there. We went so long into this. This is not a day. It went for every day. We just worked however many hours it took. And the final day before we actually captured him, because he was jumping on us, we spent about 36 hours up on Fox Hill up there off of Sabine back up. We spent 36 hours on a surveillance to catch this guy, and we finally caught him. And he confessed to all the rapes, all the burglaries, and that's the first time I ever had dealing with the federal system, because everything went federal. And I guess that was a satisfaction, because knowing what I know, and if we hadn't took the effort to look at those coins, I don't think the case would ever got developed, because we had no evidence.
Yeah, it was one
we
simple
had no
thing.
good. Nobody could identify him. We had no prints. Back then, we didn't have DNA.
Yeah.
So I guess all those victims, that was really, it made you good. But it was that one little deal with those
coins.
Silver dollars, those old coins, that got us there. But
that's a bad guy doing bad things to good people.
Bad guy doing bad things, and
yeah,
it could have been my mother. So
that's a good one.
That was that was probably the longest. At the time, my sergeant was Phil English, and he just told us, he said, "It's your life. However much time you want to spend this." I mean, naturally you had, but at the time, I mean, I've been married to my current wife for 39 years, and back then she understood, because I told her, and she said, "I support you. Do what you need to do." And me and some of the other guys, we spent endless hours. I'm talking about some nights, like you're talking about, you only get 4. we would spend 20-something hours doing leads and doing surveillance, and then we'd go home and come right back and hit it again.
Yeah, I remember in SIA and Rocket, you probably have similar. Yeah. Like my longest day was 67 hours.
You'd be amazed after when you got your focused hours just go by, and like 36 is nothing. Mm-hmm. But
in cases like that, it's easy to prioritize. Like these are innocent people.
Yeah,
and who's going to help them if not me?
No one. Yeah, because they're not good. They couldn't help you. They just most of them were in shock, and they could say, well, I think he was this. I mean, I can't remember what color his clothes. I couldn't remember nothing.
Yeah.
And it was that age group that he did, because I think he knew that they would not be able to.
Yeah.
Surely wouldn't pick him up out of a lineup.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say that case was one that I felt good about. I mean, there's been many, many more. I mean.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Over a career that long, there's a lot of them, but there's always those few that stand out, and you're like, you reflect back on it, and you're like, we did good work that day.
The whole time I was in, I spent more. That was all my whole career in law enforcement. Those years I was in the rope unit and street crimes unit, I spent more times on the witness stand and in grand jury than I ever have. I mean, it was just got to be routine, but it's good times.
What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in law enforcement, in the department, just throughout your career?
I guess technology. When I came to work here, you got a belt. You had to go buy your own weapon, your own holster, your own everything. The only thing they furnished you was a uniform. You had to buy your own flashlight. You had to buy everything. Pens, they didn't furnish you anything. I guess the technology, we had a radio with 2 channels. Now we've got
probably weighed 9 pounds.
Yep. Yeah. Had to have a good battery and a good system, because sometimes if you mashed the mic, you'd hear the lights. The lights would dim, and the light bar would go slower, and slower, and slower. This is the truth. It took a lot of power to run all. Back then, it wasn't all LED. It was not. It was bulbs.
Yeah.
And those bulbs took a lot of volts. But I guess in the early '90s we got a little box called a MDT. It was a little. You could send messages back and forth to dispatch, and they could give you a call and a case number. That's when we got away from the daily activity sheet. Back then, you had to, when you started your shift, you'd write down the date, the time, the mileage, and then every call you made, you had to fill in that line, went to this address. Then you had to give your little 2-digit, like BOB, report, whatever, criminal mischief, arrest. You had to code it. You turned those activity sheets in. Back then, we had to do alarm reports. I never understood that, but we did. You had to actually fill out a alarm report.
Yeah, paper report for each alarm.
Paper report for alarms.
Good. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And
then it take to do that now?
Then we went to a radio system that had more channels. We had some that were covert. We were still carrying the shotguns that we have today. Those 870 Remingtons. We had those in the cars back when I came here. They were in a zip bag on front of the bench seat. Back then, we didn't have bucket seats. We just had a bench seat, because everything was mounted down on the hump of the car, your radio and your little toggle switch that you turn your light on. And then I guess we've progressed to computers, radars. There was no such thing as a radar in the car. Mostly you could check out a handheld. On evenings, I knew we had little bags. You'd go in there and sign out a little book, and you get a little bag with a little handheld radar if you wanted it. The only ones that had radars in the cars was the step unit and traffic. There were a couple of payphones. Down at the Food King, there was one payphone. And back then, we all had pagers in the rope unit. And the people that were your informants that would call you up, they would say, hey, can you give me a couple of quarters, because for me to page you, I've got to have a quarter to get on the on the payphone. So you'd have to give them 2 or 3, 4 quarters. And but that's, back then we had pagers, and then you had to go find a phone to call whoever was paging you, because we didn't have phones. The first phone we had in the rope unit was this big Sprint bag phone. It was humongous. Had a big antenna on it. You plugged it in. It was Sprint. Big. I wish I had it. It was big. Oh, probably weighed 10 pounds.
When you make a call, you get a metal taste in your mouth.
Well, you had to go find a cell, because back then there wasn't a lot of cell towers. And
you had to go stand up on Fox Hill and hold the antenna up.
And our chief at the time, we'd get nasty notes through the sergeant. That phone bill on that bag phone is getting a little high. Y'all need to curtail. I mean, I don't know how much a minute cost back then. It wasn't cheap, but that was a privilege to have a cell phone. And now everybody's got one.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have computers. We have camera systems have come a long way. Y'all just don't know. But that's a good thing. I mean, if you're not doing your job, it can be a bad thing for you. But I know a lot of times I've looked at videos and say, "Oh my gosh, that makes this so much clean cut." Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing.
I love body cams and car cam. I love it all. I love those things.
So Jacky, what was it like to go from our old building over there to this new building?
It was way overdue. It was probably the best. It's probably one of the best times to see us transition to something that is truly for the times. It's professional. Mm-hmm. These guys should be so proud. I mean, I'm in the very early stages of it, and I'm so blessed that I was allowed to stay here enough time to spend some time here, and I hope I'm able to spend some more time here is in another position. But I think it's a plus for the citizens. I think it's definitely a positive deal to keep this department on the right track, because this is top of the line. This is a first class operation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's got to be taken care of.
Yeah,
it's got to be respected, and it's your house. You got to keep it.
Mm-hmm. Jacky, you want to talk about what's in the middle of the road?
I'm one of those guys that I believe in the little people. I think the little people need to be taken care of, and I'm talking about the little people is the rank and file that do the vast majority of the work. The people at the bottom make the people at the top look good, and I think sometimes they never get enough credit. And over the years, I've tried to, in my own way, to do all that. But there was a deal I went to in Austin, and they said there's nothing in the middle of the road but yellow stripes and dead armadillos. I think the people that do the job should always be the ones that take care. I'm a big supporter in patrol. I've told all these guys, my priority is keeping patrol cars in the best shape. The rest of y'all are just, patrol is the priority. I don't care who disagrees. Patrol is where it's at. Mm-hmm. That's your bread and butter. Patrol should get everything new. Patrol should get first.
So talk about our fleet for a second. How many vehicles do we have for the Longview Police Department assigned to our fleet?
Total vehicles? Mm-hmm. About 111.
And
somewhere in that vicinity.
Out of that 111, how many of those cars are dedicated to patrol?
There's 28 primary line units for patrol that cover the patrol beats 10 through 80. There's some supervisor vehicles, which are 4, but in that number, not counting those, you have in that number you also have 5 FTOs that are in patrol that have cars. You have first responders who have cars, who are the SWAT guys, and then you have like K9. You have the traffic unit has a lot of cars, which I think they're all under field operations. So you're looking at probably at 69, 68 cars.
And that's stuff that, you're directly responsible for the fleet.
Yes.
So that many vehicles, we're talking about the patrol settings, so those cars are getting used around the clock. It's not like a vehicle that your general person owns where they drive it to work and they park it all day and they pick it up and drive it back home and park it all night.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that car's on the road.
So what kind of issues you see pop up with these cars? How much maintenance are you actually doing on these?
I do. If you know where we came from and where we're at, you would probably say we did 180-degree turnaround, because when I went to patrol, we literally had cars that didn't make it to 50,000 miles because nobody ever changed the oil. The brakes would get to the point where they just wouldn't work, so you'd have to finally get brakes. But there was no maintenance back. We had no maintenance. We even had cars that the seats had broke down so bad that they had actually literally propped a 2x4 up under the seat so it would prop the seat up. So when I took over, and this is not patting me on the back, but when I took over from Chief Dingler, put me at it full time in '99, and we went through changes. We had an administrator one year said, "We're not going to buy cars this year because we're going to buy more computers and stuff. We got to get more computers." the biggest mistake you ever make is not keeping that rotation coming in. Instead of replacing cars off the line in 2 years, we were in 2004, we had to get 24 line units because we did not buy cars in the previous years. That made all our cars just back up with mileage, and the maintenance went through the roof. And I told Chief Dingler, I said, this department can never not buy cars. So now we average every year a minimum of 12 to 16 cars a year. Some years we get more, some years we get less. But with our maintenance program now, the officers can go to numerous locations, get oil change. They can go get their own tires. They can go get their car washed. We have a pretty decent, it could be better, but we have a pretty decent service center that does some work. We do have to subcontract a lot of the work. But I have to say, my patrol fleet that I take out of patrol is very worthy and dependable for a first responder, a PAR officer, an FTO, or whoever can take that car, and we can get 6 to 10 years life out of it instead of 2. We used to never could keep a car with 2 years. It would be gone.
Well, and then for people listening, they don't maybe understand, so those patrol units, on average, about 100 miles a shift.
Oh,
maybe just a little less, a little more.
Over 1 million miles a year.
100 miles a shift, 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So when you start doing some pretty quick math, you realize that it doesn't take a short amount of time for that car to end up with 100,000 miles on it.
It has 100,000 miles, but the new cars now have hour meters.
Yeah.
Those idling time, those cars idle a lot, so you have a lot of idle hours too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But if you have a decent maintenance program, you can make those cars last. We've got cars right now that are in secondary deals with nearly 150,000, and I'd go anywhere in them.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for some of the younger people in law enforcement?
How much time do you have?
However much you want to take.
For you, Jacky, we got all the time.
Listen to me. This is serious.
Okay.
It's funny you said that because I had 5 recruits for the last few weeks that they start the academy. They start the academy Monday. And I told all of them, I said, look, guys, if I knew what I know now when I was 26 years old and I went full-time in this deal, there's so many things I would have done different. I wouldn't have changed my approach to law enforcement, but I would have took my education serious. I would have took my family serious. I would have took the way I handle my personal finances. Law enforcement officers tend to get themselves in positions where they buy a lot of stuff because maybe this is like these guys that we're just hiring. This is their first full-time job, and they're making a pretty decent salary compared to what I did when I started here. So you tend to go out and buy that brand new truck or that brand new boat or motorcycle, and then you get yourself in that position where now you've got to start getting overtime, off-duty jobs. In my situation, I had to do all the above because I was divorced. I was supporting another deal. I had kids in college. I had to work off-duty jobs. I didn't do good in college. I quit. I wish I'd have finished. I wish I'd have got my degree. And I tell these guys, don't jump off into this stuff. Take this serious. Don't go out and work yourself to death because we've got officers that work all the time. And it affects their relationships with their family. It reflects on their job because they get tired. They're not able to do, and that's not good. And it's sad, but you can get in that trap. And I think people need to seek change. I don't think you need to retire off of one shift. I think, I think you should not spend 20 plus years on one shift, especially nights, because it's not good for your health. I don't care what. Mm-hmm. It's just not good. So I would encourage these guys to move around. There's a difference between policing on nights and then there are day shift and evening shift.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I was listening to this interview with a guy, and he said maybe we should reframe it from no regrets to you get to pick your regrets, right? And talking about that, maybe you look back and you say, well, I could have had that new car, but instead what I got to have was time with my family because I wasn't working all the time.
Well, you go a lot with your family. I say a lot, but But a lot of guys lose that because when you have to work an off-duty job to miss a soccer game or a game with one of your kids,
you can only do that so many times.
You can only do that, and you can only say sorry. And kids don't forget.
No. Mm-mm.
Daddy was never there, and I'm telling you that when you get older, it hurts you.
Yep.
It really, and I tell these guys, our profession is notorious for divorces. That is a bad thing.
You are correct.
And it's not good.
Yep.
There's so many people affected that are totally innocent.
Just before I got here, I'd called Rocket, and we got it right there on our notes. 26.4 years is the average career in law enforcement for those who make it to retirement, right? The attrition rate leading up to that 26.4 years is astronomical. The vast majority of people who start this job don't retire in this job.
No. Probably 5 years. What's the minimum? About 5 years?
I can't remember. It depends. I know that. So speaking just from being around this, I got hired on that actually made it with 7, and 15 years later, there's 2 of us left.
Yeah, there's something you just brought up that we don't talk. Officers come in this job out of the military; they're pretty fit and finished. But when I hired on, and just till recent years, maybe right before y'all hired on, the vast majority of this department smoked, and you just virtually don't see that anymore. And you was talking about the attrition. Most officers didn't make. They had heart attacks or stroked out in the 50s. Or
it's funny you mentioned that. The average officer experiences their first heart attack at 46. Their first. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reason I bring all this up is you're doing something right. Not only to have surpassed the average life expectancy of a police officer, which is, I want to say, 57, 56, and you've surpassed almost by double the law enforcement career of somebody who makes it to retirement. So the reason I bring all that up is when you can look back from the lens of experience, what is it that you think you did differently to make it this long? And it's not only just make it this long, but you're a fun guy to be around. You're funny. You make jokes. You poke people. And if I can ask, how old are you?
How old am I? 72.
So what do you think that you did differently to make it this long in this job that is hard on every person?
I truly enjoy and love the job I do. It's the hardest. My wife, to be honest with you, we've had disagreements, spouts, whatever. She wanted me to be not gone. That's a bad word. She wanted me to retire probably 6 or 7 years ago, which I could retire long time ago. But I guess it's just the deal that Carrie, I love it. I mean, I love this. This is my family.
Yeah.
But I have another family that I probably, like you said, you spend more time. And if you think about it, you go home, you eat, you watch TV, or you do something, then you go to bed, and then you work all these other jobs. Well, everybody, my wife and my family's made sacrifice because I've missed a lot. Those early years, you miss Christmas Eve, Christmas. You're working all those holidays, and I guess I just been blessed. I mean, I just truly been blessed. But I think it's just you have something to live for, and I think a lot of people. There's 3 people that have personally told me that when they retired, they regretted it within months because they were not happy. They were always feeling bad, and they didn't have anything else to do. And they said they would wish they would have stayed another 3 to 5 years. And it's hard. This is the hardest thing in my life is to pull the plug full time and to know that Monday through Friday or whatever that this is my gig. This is my priority, and it's probably going to be one of the hardest things for me to transition to is a full time guy that gives everybody a hard time, but he's only kidding, to a guy that's only here maybe 2.5 days a week or whatever.
Yeah, when somebody had mentioned that you were retiring, it struck me from a selfish perspective that I've never known this job without you here.
Yep.
And I guess in retrospect, I never considered being here without you being here. You know what I mean? So there was a bright ray of hope when they were like, oh, don't worry, he's coming back part-time. I said part-time. He'll be here full-time with us. He might get paid for 20, but he'll be doing it.
Me and Rocket had this conversation the other day, and I was honest with him. We said, but there's so many times that, you know how people, you put these people say, oh, Jacky's gone this month or that month. I said, did I say that? Somebody else assumed that, and I can name the names who did it, but that was just false information put out. But I've got to do it. I mean, the end of this, but it starts next week, April.
So the end of April, you said?
Yeah, that's my plan. Then I've got to transition for a pay cycle or so, and then I can, and this is all because the chief. I'm here to help him. I mean, we all are. Mm-hmm. And I feel that I feel like I still have something to offer, and I still want to do it. I still think I can do it. I mean, I do get tired sometimes. I hate those stairs. I like the elevator, but I still want to have a little.
You still got that fire.
I still got a little fire.
Yeah.
But I think everybody wants to have a purpose in life. I think when you go home and just sit in the chair, I think you're numbering your days.
Yeah, my great grandmother, she lived be 99, and she said, "You stop moving, you start dying." And yeah, she was
I guess the best thing is not to think about it, because there's only good Lord knows when that day comes. And
that's right.
I'm living every day, and I mean, it can happen here, it can happen somewhere else, but I have no control over it. So I'm in it for the long run.
Well, whatever you've done, you got the secret. We just got to pry it out of you to make it.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's good genes. I don't know.
Looking at you, that's probably not the case. But
man.
Remember that's another reason that I'm your favorite.
Like Carrie Moore.
Another fraction on your side.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to speculate, I'd say that your attitude, your perception on reality and what the job is and how you want to live your life probably has a lot to do with how long you stick around. And I don't know. I mean, I tell people all the time that your day is what you make it. And there's people that can be negative and grumpy and frustrated about life in general. And then there are...
you can make your life miserable for 8 hours.
Then there's people that see every day as a beautiful day.
Well, I was about to say, what every day I get to work, I ask you, hey, what kind of day was it?
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
All right, Jackie.
Yes, sir.
What do you got for closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, your closing thoughts. What do you
I
have?
continue to hope that the department prospers. It continues to be a department that people seek out to start their career. I hope that our recruiting efforts continue to show some improvement, because just in the last few weeks, we've lost some veteran people. I mean, even though, they were at the end here, that's still a number, and I hope that levels off. I mean, I'm not aware of many more that are getting ready to retire, but I just hope our recruiting efforts continue, and I hope that this city and this government continues to support the police department, and I think everything will be all right. And I hope you guys and girls continue to have a truly blessed career, and all of your ambitions that you're seeking are fulfilled, and or whatever it is, continue to do the job you have at hand and be the best lieutenant on that shift you can be. That's right. Take care of the little people. I think you always need to remember where you came from, but I think everything's going to work out well. I think we'll be good. I think tomorrow's a brighter day, and God bless America.
I like it.
I like it.
Michaela, you got some closing stuff for us?
Yeah, we'll probably have we've had some coffee with the cop events recently, and I think every one of our PAR officers is trying to host one, so be on the lookout for that on our social media. We'll release when those are going to happen. We also have a YouTube channel now.
Finally.
Our own YouTube channel. It's just Longview Police Department.
Is there anything on that yet?
We have 3 videos on it.
Okay.
They're all recruiting videos that we've posted on our Facebook and other stuff.
Yeah.
But
when you look up Longview Police Department on YouTube, make sure it's Longview Texas.
Not Washington.
Not Washington.
Well, I don't think Washington has one.
Oh.
I think at Longview Police Department, I think we took it.
So
they didn't have it.
The name of our channel is Longview Police Department.
Yes.
Okay.
We also now have we've got this software where if you are interested, instead of you can still call, but we've now launched this thing where you can text join LPD to 903-912-6975. And that will send you straight to one of our recruiters. You can chat through there. You can kind of sign up for a testing time, talk with them about that if you want. I think it's really cool. It's very simple because you can just text. I think it's way easier, honestly. So if you're interested, do that. I think that's all we have. So we hope you're doing good. Everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.